Hey there, G3 here with a interesting and very easy, cheap Warhammer 40k terrain project. Glue, 3 wine bottle corks, some index card, some scissors. First, cut 3 thin strips from your index card per barrel that you're making. I'm going to have all 3 of these barrels be on one base as one terrain piece, so I need 3 per. Put a thin line of glue down each of your strips of index paper. Wrap these around one along the bottom of the cork, one along the top of the cork, and one in the middle of the cork. You should be using craft glue rather than super glue, so that there's a long time before it sets, and the paper can kind of be shifted into place afterward. Make sure that it is flat and that it can do this without extruding past the barrel. Once you have all your barrels glued, take a piece of basing material, in this case I'm using foam core, that is an appropriate size for the amount of barrels that you're doing, and cut it into an organic shape. If you're using foam core like me, I find it sometimes fun to peel off the first layer of paper to almost get a layered effect. Then you can take a knife and smooth out the foam edges. Next, glue the barrels. In this case, I want all 3 together in the middle, where you want them to be on your base. I'm going to add a little dab of glue down here for added stability. Often when you buy smaller boxes of miniatures from Games Workshop, the 4 or 5 bases that you get, and maybe even in larger packages, will come on a little sprue of their own. Usually the black bases have 4 attached to this little plastic bit. I like to keep them. In this instance, I'm going to glue it to the top of the barrels to make it look like some sort of space-age holding mechanism, keeping these barrels of gasoline together. Finally, just for grins, I have these little bits. This is a bit of a Raven Wing bike squad plastic bit, and this is a cut-up Chaos Space Marine head. I'm going to glue these onto the base for just some kind of interesting little battle-worn, objects. Don't be afraid to stick things into the exposed foam if you're using foam core, as it's a great way to give it added stability. Again, I haven't yet touched any super glue. This is all with craft glue. I find that when working with terrain, it's the best, especially because you need a lot of it. Alrighty, now we're going to let this dry, then base it with spray paint primer. I will be back. Alrighty, so here we are. My trusted old applesauce thing for water, and got an old blister pack for a palette. Great uses for stuff. Here's the piece of terrain primed, and then first thing we're going to paint is the barrel. So I have some red, and I'm just going to put a dash of black in it. Mixy to make a dark crimson. And then I'm using this size brush. See if you can, And we'll just go over, you can be a little bit sloppy, and just go over the barrels. I'm going to try and keep it neat towards the bottom. Okay, with the barrels now painted that dark red, we're going to apply another base coat of just gray to your base. And I'm going to try and do this part here, the part still with that like hard topping of the foam core, as cement, and this part that's more rough as dirt. So I'm just going to paint the cement part of it gray. Get just a standard gray, and then we're obviously going to wash it later. So just as long as it's vaguely concrete colored, you are good. With that done, we are going to do the same thing to the other side, but dirt colored. Don't forget to do the sides. Remember, it's a 3D piece, so you're going to be seeing it from all different sorts of angles. While when painting cement, you want to finish it out with all of your brush strokes going one direction. It's kind of the opposite with dirt, and just go haphazard with it. Just make sure you dab and scratch at it and move it all around. Try and really get it into all the recesses of the foam. The reason you want to be more smooth with cement is that, or concrete, I should say, is it's not going to look right. And this is just with a base coat. We'll make it look more weathered, but remember, like, how that's made is that people will take those scrapers and smooth it all out and stuff. So you want it to be more neat. And for a lot of you, that's self-explanatory. I probably didn't even explain it. Remember to get the sides. Don't have to get the bottom, though. And there goes the base coat for our dirt. Now all that's left for base coats is going to be the smaller items and then this thing up top. I chose to go with silver on the little extra bits, and just kind of applying it not very precisely. What I will apply precisely, however, with my smaller brush is these lines made across the barrels from the paper. We're now going to paint them with the same red you used, but without the black, just the unmixed red. When you're done, and you should also be sure to paint the tops of the barrels red, so it looks like it's a cap sitting on top. It should look something like this. Don't worry if there's a stark difference in color between those bands, because we're going to do something about that now with our second base coats. This is just going to be red and a tiny bit of black. So put the black just all not together on your palette, but separate, and then just drag over a little bit of it at a time until you have just a kind of happy in between these two shades of red. Just get it to where I'd like it. Boom, perfect. Almost ketchup-y color. You hear a fly? Okay, sorry. Then this brush is fairly dry, and then but it's not quite a dry brush technique. But I am going to kind of get not that much paint on the brush. And then what you're going to do is just pull it along these surfaces in a kind of haphazard way where you get that little textured end, like so. Parts that are lighter, and then we are going to let that dry before we start on washes. For anyone who's a new painter, in layman's terms, a wash is it's almost like a paint that is more liquid than it is pigment. And what it does is sift down into the crevices, the natural crevices of whatever you are painting, and darken it. And it simulates shadow in our world. So, for instance, my shirt, if it was, let's see, if it was furled like this, it gets darker in the middle, right? Well, on a model, that pigment would fall into there and replicate that. So there are washes that you can buy, and I'm sure they're the best, but this is a train piece, and I use some of those for models. But train piece, I'm just using the Joann's paint that is $2, and take black, just get tons of water, mix it in. Right, so we're just gonna take all that and just look at that. We're just scooping it in like helpings of sugar in coffee or something. All right. One of the good signs of a wash that is ready is that when you take your paintbrush and put it, that it almost looks like watercolor. All right. Then what we're going to do is something very technical and very difficult. Put it everywhere. Just kidding, obviously. So all you do, add water as you go, is just apply that wash to every surface. This is going to take the longest to dry, so do this maybe split this project into 2 sessions, and then this will be the last step of your first session, and that way you can just let it dry and all that. So as you can see, I was doing on this one, look at how it accentuates those natural lines. So that's why it's better for these barrels to use that index paper to make those lines instead of just painting a line across, because it actually gives it that 3D effect. So we're going to apply it everywhere, and I mean everywhere. So also means here on the dirt and on the cement. So let's see. So we got all that on the cement. You just spread it like you spread the gray earlier, and it will find those natural imperfections and make it look more like cement. Now this, again, takes a while to dry, and keep it on a level surface. You don't want this slanted because it'll, dry strangely. So let's see, make sure all that's good, and then we'll just go and do. Now this one, the dirt already looks pretty good in terms of it darkened in the recesses, but I'll go ahead and just, do a little bit more. And you can also do it, it works awesome on metal. Washes are like the best. So. And you don't want to put too much water. A sign that you put too much water is that your paper and stuff will warp, or I should say foam core. But if you have excess water, a neat trick, just dry out your brush on a paper towel, and then just place it on a pool of water, and it sucks it up like a vacuum. Or not a vacuum, but it's weird. So if you realize you put too much, you can just dab, dry, dab, dry, dab, dry. Alrighty, so with that, we're going to let this dry, and I will be back. What for me will be a while, but for you guys will be. Alrighty, so here we are with the wash dried, and you can already tell all the difference that wash detail makes. Next step is dry brushing. So this brush is dry now, and first thing we're going to do is the dirt. Dirt was done with brown, then washed with black. So we're going to dry brush it orange. Get a little bit of paint, you don't need that much. Wipe it on a surface, and then a good way to test it, put it on your finger, and that's perfect. If you can barely see it show up on your finger, not barely, but just, a slight, then you're ready for some dry brushing. Then we're just going to lightly dry brush it over this rough surface. And you can watch it start to lighten up on the higher parts. This is where that foam core really does a great job of looking like a natural dirt or earth that's been scorched by war. And it's such a easy to obtain and utilize basing material. I think more people should use it, especially for terrain. I've used it in miniatures and stuff, which still obviously works. But, I mean, you know, you could spend hours like gluing down sand and then re-gluing to make sure there's no loose sand and flocking and all this other stuff. Or if you're not, I mean, and while that does look really good, if you're not too worried about it and you just want something simple, this is a really good way to go. So there we go. There's the dry brushed earth. Then we're going to dry brush concrete with white. Now, wash off the brush, but it's still wet, so we're going to dry it off. Just kind of strain the water out. It doesn't have to be perfectly dry, but just kind of do that with it. Alrighty, get some on the thing. Get it just to where we want it. That's too much. And perfect. Okay, so this is a flat surface, it's not textured, so we're not going to go straight over it. But what I do want to get is the edges. So what I'm going to do is kind of just, oh, didn't mean to because this thing's in the way. Alright, just kind of go around the edges like this, and it kind of gives it a, you know, more distinguished look. Perfect. Alrighty. We're also going to dry brush the things that we painted metal white as well. Now, get very little paint on your brush because this is gonna. You want it to be like the shine on something that's metal, which, if you look at it in real life, it's very small and only in one spot. So we just kind of do that on this little guy. Do that, and then on the Raven Wing thing. That. Alrighty. So that's everything dry brushed but the barrels, which we will dry brush with some red mixed with orange. So I'm going to do a drop of red. Get a bit of orange. Now, normally when I want to darken stuff, I add black. Adding white is a little bit trickier. I'm not like the best on color theory, but it tends to make it look pinkish, and that's not really the color I want. So to keep it that red intensity, I'm going to do red plus a lighter color of orange to get a highlight, but still make it look, not make it look pink. Okay, so we got that. Again, just get it a little bit on the edge of the brush. Then we're going to go over the edges, so not down the side, but these, like, see, I'm just getting the tops, just highlighting the edges and accentuating them. Okay, so here's our terrain piece, all base coated, dry brushed, or excuse me, base coated, washed, and dry brushed. All that's left now is detail. Alrighty, now for final detail, I kind of want to put little emblems on the gas cans that are like, make them look flammable, or like they're, like signs that they explode, which also could be an interesting game mechanic if you want to add that to this terrain piece. So we're going to get our small brush, dip it in water, and then lightly drag the water off, but try and get it so that it has like a fine point if it's old and used like mine is. And then I'm going to dip it in yellow, very lightly, just get a tiny bit on the brush. And then I'm going to, don't do a line all at once, do a little bit of movement, then a little bit more movement, and just try and get it to display like that. So what I'm going for here is just a triangle. See, just a little bit. Okay, see that amount of work for just that line so far. That's the base of the triangle. Then we're going to do that same thing, but fill out the triangle. And on the topic of rules, I think this piece of terrain would be awesome for a sabotaged objective. Like, it would always start out sabotaged, right? And then when you roll that 1, when it explodes, that is, a stray bullet hitting one of these gas canisters and it blowing up. I think that'd be a really fun rule. That's another cool thing, is don't always build or keep rules of your war game in mind when building terrain, whether it's distance and height between stuff, the number of models they can hold. For instance, in Warhammer, I like to make stuff that 3 inches between levels, because that's just like a natural rule that people tend to fall into. So there's the triangle. I'm thinking maybe, what do you think? Should there be something around it, or I don't really know. I'm not really. So I ended up going with a smorgasbord of symbols. We have one yellow triangle, just like a warning symbol. This one that I thought looked like some sort of alien warning symbol. And then I tried to do a fire in a yellow circle. Didn't turn out as well, but it's still fine. And then let's take a look what our finished terrain piece looks like with some models. A welcome addition to my kind of wasteland factory theme of terrain that I've been making. I just set it up here. This is just a bit of cardboard that I had from a poster that I cut out. But yeah, I got a little diorama going on, some chaos versus some dark angels, very dark vengeance-y, and I think it looks pretty cool. I hope you guys, it's great for some 5-up cover, but maybe at a risk that it might blow up. A few models can stand on it if needed, but I don't know, I wouldn't advise it, because again, it might blow up. At any rate, I'm very pleased with how the piece turned out. So thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.